Sorry, I've got to turn my microphone on. Welcome to today's full council meeting and welcome to those members of the public and press that are accessing us via the live stream on YouTube. I take this opportunity to remind members and officers, colleagues to turn their mobile phones to off or to silent to ensure that when addressing the meeting, they speak directly into the microphone, ensuring that the red light is on. Microphones should be switched off when you are not speaking so as not to interfere with the live broadcast. We're moving on to agenda item 1 from member service to receive apologies for absence.
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillor Humphrey, Councillor Mrs Mayor and Councillor Dr Naywes. Thank you.
Thank you. The second item on the agenda is to elect the chairman for the period of the next annual meeting and to resolve the allowance of £4,116 plus travelling expenses to be paid for the person elected. As outgoing chairman, I would like to nominate Councillor Nick Meakins. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Connor. Are there any other nominations? No. In the absence of any other nominations, Councillor Meakins is duly elected as chairman of the council for 23-24.
Fellow councillors, thank you for electing me as chairman of the council. I will carry out the role to the best of my ability and I'm looking forward to representing Fenland at many events. Before I continue with the meeting, there are 3 people I would specifically like to mention. Firstly, Rob Scolding. Returning members will remember that Rob was vice chairman and had things followed their usual course, he would have been made chairman today. Unfortunately, Rob's health was such that he felt unable to continue in his role as vice chairman, hence my taking over from him. I feel that a part of Rob will be with me as I carry out my duties, and I hope I can do him proud. Secondly, my mother, Margaret Meakins. Some of you will know that my mum has been very seriously ill over the past 4 months, and there have been times when it looked like we would lose her. They have been tough months for all my family, but she has, I'm glad to say, kept going. I was especially pleased to be able to tell her that her little boy, that she still calls me, was having this honour bestowed on me today. And finally, Alex. It's been a privilege to work with Alex during the past year and to be able to represent Fenland District Council on the few occasions that he couldn't attend some events. I would now like Alex to come forward to accept his past chairman's badge and to say a few words.
He was Irish as well. Thank you, Nick, for those words. As the outgoing chairman of Fenland District Council, I did a calculation the other day, and I've actually been in office 1,066 days. So I've got my own Battle of Hastings. So that was a little thing there. I've enjoyed the 3 years I've been here, and I have to say I've had a brilliant team around me. Member services, Carol, Paul, and all the ladies in member services who we sometimes take for granted. They've been there for me. And it's been an enjoyable 3 years. Really, really enjoyable. I have to say thank you particularly to Jo, who's been an absolute godsend to me, because without her, I wouldn't have got anywhere at any time. But she has been my backup all the time. And as a thank you to Jo, I would like to present you with something. That to me is richly deserved, and is not quite what she expected. She's a bit embarrassed by it, but nevertheless, she deserves it, as do all the member services team who've been behind us, and all the councillors, because I had support from all the councillors, the mayors of the towns, and everyone ongoing. So I have to say thank you to all those. The highlights of my term with the royal visits. I've also had some low points with the death of the Queen, and we went through with Paul the other day to find out what exactly has happened. I've had the death of the Duke of Edinburgh, the funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh, the Jubilee, the death of the Queen, the proclamation which was announced in here, and the funeral of the Queen, and the coronation. So I've had quite an eventful time in office. And I honestly don't think, and I think Paul agreed with me, I don't think a chairman will have all those events in their term of office. I sincerely hope not, because some of them are quite devastating for other families. But I wish to say thank you to all the members of this chamber that have supported me over the last 3 years, and for the member services. Thank you very much.
Agenda item 3. The next item on the agenda is to elect a vice chairman for the period to the next annual meeting, and to resolve that an allowance of £1,000 plus travelling expenses be paid to the person elected. May I have a nomination, please? Councillor Hoy.
I'd like to propose Brenda Barber.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Bowden, thank you. Are there any other nominations? In the absence of any other nominations, Councillor Barber is duly elected as Vice Chairman of the Council for 2023-2024. Councillor Barber, can I invite you to say a few words, please?
Firstly, thank you. Just a few words. I'll do my best to support Nick in any way that I can. And secondly, I will try to be a quick learner.
Agenda item 4. The next item on the agenda is to elect a leader of the council for a 4-year term and for the duly elected leader to confirm their cabinet appointments. May I have a nomination, please? Councillor Mrs. French. Thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Warwick. Are there any other nominations? In the absence of any other nominations, Councillor Bowden is duly elected as leader of the council for a 4-year term. Councillor Bowden, would you like to address the meeting and inform council of your cabinet and their portfolios?
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and congratulations on your election as chairman of this council. The cabinet details have been circulated to members, but for those who haven't seen it, I will take on the portfolio of finance. Councillor Jan French will be deputy leader and portfolio holder for revenues and benefits and civil parking enforcement. Councillor Ian Benny will be the portfolio holder for economic growth and skills. Councillor Sam Hoy will be the portfolio holder for housing and licensing. Councillor Dee Laws, the portfolio holder for planning and flooding. Councillor Alex Miscantlan, the portfolio holder for leisure and internal drainage boards. Councillor Peter Murphy, the portfolio holder for refuse and cleansing, parks and open spaces. Councillor Chris Seaton, the portfolio holder for transport, heritage and culture. Councillor Steve Tierney, the portfolio holder for communications, transformation, climate change and strategic refuse. And Councillor Sue Walworth, the portfolio holder for community, health, environmental health, CCTV, community safety and military covenant. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item 5. Members will find the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of February 2023 at pages 5 to 20 of the agenda pack. I would like to move approval of the minutes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Booth.
Yes, Chairman, although I've got a couple of comments to make on the minutes, if I may.
Were you seconding? Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Booth, do you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Page 13 on the last bullet point, from the third line from the bottom, it says that I apparently said that it was half the council tax base. That wasn't what I was saying. What I said was that they were paying about half the council tax. So I think that bit needs just corrected. And on page 14, line 10, it says the word acceptable, but what I said was the services need improving or need to be improved. So with those amendments, I'd like to propose that we accept the minutes.
Does anybody else have any comments they would like to make about the minutes? So with the changes that Councillor Booth has just suggested we make, are members happy that the minutes should be agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 6, to receive any announcements from the chairman of the council or the head of paid service. I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate and announce all members elected to Fenner District Council, who are James Carney, Alan Gowler and Charlie Marks for Chatteris North and Mainey, Ian Benny, Anne Hay and Peter Murphy for Chatteris South, David Connor and Maureen Davis for Doddington and Wimbledon, Dalroy and Matthew Summers for Elm and Christchurch, Brenda Barber, Sam Clark and Chris Seaton for Leverington and Wisbech Rural, John Clark, Stuart Harris and Mark Purser for March East, Steve Count, Kim French and Paul Hicks for March North, Gary Christie and Jan French for March South, Tim Taylor and Andrew Woolard for March West and Benwick, Gavin Booth, Diane Cutler and Michael Humphrey for Parson Grove and Wisbech St Mary, Chris Bowden, Alex Miscanlon and Hack Noaz for Whittlesea East and Villages, Jason Mockett for Whittlesea Lattersea, Dee Laws and Elizabeth Sennett Clough for Whittlesea North West, Roy Gerstner and Kay Mear for Whittlesea South, Lucy Foyce Beard for Wisbech North, David Oliver and I, Nick Meekins for Wisbech Riverside, Samantha Hoy, Steve Tierney and Susan Woolwork for Wisbech South, Sydney Imafidon, Billy Rackley and David Patrick for Wisbech Woolsoken and Waterloo. There are no announcements from the Chief Executive today. Before we proceed with the remaining items on the agenda, I would like to take this opportunity to confirm that for this and future meetings during the current municipal year, I would like to exercise my discretion under paragraph 19.1 of the standing orders to permit any member who, on health grounds, wishes to remain seated to speak to do so. Agenda item 7 sets out the suggested dates for meetings of the council in 2023-2024, which are the annual meeting of the council in 2024 to be held on Monday, the 13th of May, and the ordinary meetings of the council to be held on Monday, the 17th of July, 2023, Monday, the 2nd of October, 2023, Monday, the 11th of December, 2023, and Monday, the 26th of February, 2024. I would like to propose the approval of the suggested dates. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bowden, thank you. Are the suggested dates agreed? Yes. Thank you. Agenda item 8, declarations of interest. Agenda item 8 is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct or any interest under the code of conduct on planning matters in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please can you raise your hand? Councillor Bowden, and Councillor Miscanlon and Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Chairman. In relation to agenda item 13, I don't believe that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest nor a disclosable non-pecuniary interest, and neither do I believe that I'm predetermined. But I would like it to be noted that I will not take any part in the debate or the vote on that item because of the possibility that someone might perceive that I'm predetermined.
Thank you. Councillor Miscanlon.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, on agenda item 13, I was the chairman of planning at Whittlesea Town Council when this was brought before the council, and I will not take part in the debate or vote on it.
Councillor Laws.
To confirm, I was the chairman of the working party and obviously very much part of the neighbourhood plan. Therefore, I will not take any part in discussions or the vote. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gerstner.
In exactly the same way as Councillor Bowden. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more declarations of interest? Agenda item 9, procedure rule 8.6 permits questions on notice to the chairman, the leader or member of the cabinet, or to the chair of any committee or subcommittee, of which today I can formally record that there are none. Procedure rule 8.4 permits the leader of the main opposition group or his nominated representative to put questions to the leader. Councillor Booth, you have a maximum of 20 minutes if you would like to ask your questions, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the first question I'd like to ask the leader is, given the cost of living crisis and increasing costs associated with private rented accommodation, there's a real need to provide more affordable housing for residents within the district. Given the viability issues we experience across the district and the impact this is having on the provision of affordable housing, affordable social housing. Will you give a commitment to see how FDC can work with all partners to see how we can overcome the issues? In particular, can FDC explore the potential for more exception sites for people with local connections in the rural areas?
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, if I may, through you, first of all, congratulate Councillor Booth on his appointment as the leader of the main opposition group. And may I also thank Councillor Booth, Chairman, through you, for giving advance notice of this question. I have said over the last 4 years repeatedly to members, if you wish to ask a question and get a substantive answer, it's far better to give me advance notice so that I can look things up and make sure I've got my facts right, rather than reserve my position just in case I get anything wrong. So thank you very much indeed, Councillor Booth, through you, for that, Chairman. I think in this, first of all, I'd like to widen the question out a little bit, because it's not merely that we have an issue with lack of affordable social housing. We have a lack of housing in this country overall. And that is a fact which I don't think many people honestly should deny. At a national level, and I'm going to make this party political if you don't mind, Chairman, because I'm going to criticise Councillor Booth's party as much as I criticise my own in this. At national level, our politicians are quite aware and say how much they want to see more houses built across the country. And then at local level, our parties, including the Lib Dems and the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, they fight elections to stop houses being built in their area. And I have to say that I find that to be hypocritical. And I'm not accusing Councillor Booth of that, of course, and I'm certainly not accusing myself of that, but it has to be said that around the country, we see this taking place all too frequently. Now, in our area, it has to be said that we actually have quite a good record in terms of what is potentially available for housing taking place in our area as far as affordable homes are concerned. We have 7 schemes which are coming to fruition in Fenland over the course of the next year during 23-24, and 326 new affordable homes should be available in Fenland over that period of time. And we currently in the pipeline have another 9 sites where there are further 486 affordable units which are scheduled to be completed after the 31st of March 24. So we have quite a number of sites and a number of properties which are going to become available. And I have to say that 326 that we have coming available, scheduled to become available in the next 12 months, is proportionately far, far greater than the average in the UK as a whole. Something for us all to be proud of. Councillor Booth in his questions specifically asked about exception sites and particularly talked about affordable social housing. I think it's important that we look at all forms of affordable housing, not merely affordable social housing. And Councillor Booth will be as well aware as I am of the difficulties of achieving this, which is one of the reasons he's mentioned exception sites for people with local connections in rural areas. I have a very great deal of sympathy with that suggestion. In fact, my whole approach to this issue has changed over the last 4 years, partly because the pressures upon people have increased over the last 4 years, and partly because I've got a better understanding of the situation now than I had 4 years ago. So what I will do, Chairman, is to invite Councillor Booth to have a discussion, possibly by a remote discussion, with our portfolio holders for planning and housing, together with me and officers, about how these various issues can be looked at, because we have one major area where we're going to be able to make a difference over the next 6 to 9 months, and that is what's going to happen with the local plan and what we'll settle on to put to the planning inspector for our local plan. And I personally have a lot of sympathy with the concept of the rural exception sites. One of the difficulties that we have, of course, in that is that we don't want to have housing for people who really don't have resources to have their own motor vehicles in areas where there is no bus service. So there are pluses and minuses, but I'm very sympathetic to the suggestion which is being made by Councillor Booth, and I'd warmly welcome him to that discussion, which I'll try to make sure takes place before the next full council meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I welcome the commitment from the leader there, and it was remiss of me not to congratulate yourself on being elected leader, and also to yourself, Chair, as well. So I apologise for that. Yes, the reason I raised this question is the issue appears to be becoming more prevalent. I'm dealing with at least a couple of active cases now, people living in my area that are really struggling to find alternate accommodation, and they've got the threat of being made homeless hanging over them. So that's why I think we need to take this forward. I think the reason I mentioned about all partners is, how can we work with the system? Sitting on overview and scrutiny, we've had Clarion come before us in the last 6 months or so. I think it's fair to say that although we've got a pipeline of business, I think longer term they are struggling because of the viability issues to find other sites. And I take on board your point about the poor bus connections and people, but people want to live in the communities they've grown up in all their lives and where they've got their friends and family. And that's what I think we need to try and achieve. So thank you for that, leader. I'll move on to my second question then. So the second question is following the recent announcement that FDC are purchasing the old Barclays Bank site as part of the March Regeneration project. Can you confirm where the decision was taken to purchase this site and the governance regarding that decision? As it was involved the purchase of commercial building, can you confirm it was a confidential item? I know we discussed about the March Regeneration project at the last meeting, but obviously this is new information that's come to light fairly recently. And I've got a supplementary question on this as well.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. I can give a nice simple answer to this. Yes, I can confirm that this decision was made as a confidential item at the cabinet meeting, which took place at noon on Monday, the 5th of September. I came in especially on my birthday for that meeting. And yes, we did have the discussion and gave authorization for the spend to take place. I can confirm it was a confidential item. Now, we have a situation, it's really quite anomalous, this, and that is that once we pass a resolution in exempt session as a confidential item, it then remains confidential until it is de-exempted. And we don't really rigorously go through a process of de-exemption. So once something's exempt, it continues to be exempt, even when there is no good reason for it to continue to be exempt. And the reason it was exempt back then was it was commercially confidential. It's no longer commercially confidential. I'm happy to advise that the amount which was paid was £750,000.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And the supplementary question is regarding the fact that this has now come to light. There's been criticism made regarding the purchase of this site, and more broadly on the work being undertaken by the March High Street project, which Councillor Cornwall asked at the last meeting. I think this indicates that the district council have not adequately consulted and taken on board the views of the wider population and residents of the wider area. So how will we ensure that we can properly consult on these future or further changes, particularly use of this site? Because I think what we need to do is obviously bring people with us. I think we haven't achieved that. There has been quite a lot of comment regarding the way things have been delivered and the fact that there's a perception that the district council isn't listening to what people want. So, and I think Councillor Cornwall made the point at the last meeting that apparently we weren't following our own consultation strategy, which I think we have agreed through ONS that needs to be revisited and re-looked at some point anyway. So, over to you,
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, Councillor Booth is correct that we didn't get that consultation completely correct. There were clear failures as far as that was concerned. But let's be quite clear what a consultation is. We don't go out in consultation to ask people, what do you want? And then we give exactly what it is that the response is that they've given us. There are limitations as to what can be done in a consultation. And the consultation so far as the March High Street Fund work generally was concerned wasn't so much about the road layout, which had already pretty much been determined as a matter of for Cambridgeshire County Council, not for us, but for everything which was associated with that. Having said that, we clearly still didn't get that right, and we have lessons to learn from that. So far as the Barclays Bank site is concerned, there was no consultation on that because the timing and the commercial confidentiality was such that there wasn't any opportunity for that. And I can tell all members, Chairman, that we still haven't got a particular purpose for it. It's clearly very much a strategic site within March High Street. There are a number of different possibilities, and we will be consulting with people about the way in which that should be moved forwards. And absolutely no decision has been made about that yet. But I'll go slightly further than this, if I may, Chairman, and say that I very much regretted the way in which the issue and the timing of the issue was such that it ended up being caught in the party politics running up to the local elections. I don't feel that was helpful in the decision-making process at all. One can make one's judgment about the attitude of the people of March by the result that we saw in the local elections, as far as those local results were concerned. But that, I believe, doesn't excuse any failings that we may have had in the process of getting to where we are now. What I'm going to be asking, and it may not be possible, so let me be quite clear, I'm not making any promises here, but what I have been asking is whether we have time and resources to allow ourselves to look again at the precise siting of the fountain in March. It may be that the situation is such that we just don't have the flexibility to be able to change that decision or even to look at it again. But I am at least asking that question in terms of time. We have to bear in mind what English Heritage may say. There may be other considerations that the County Council may have. We're not talking about changing the road layout. But I'm more than willing, and as I say, I've made a start in asking officers to look at this to see if it can be looked at again, and if so, to get the views of local people, and especially local shopkeepers, about any alternative location for the fountain from the one which we've already agreed. It would take having to come back to planning committee. It wouldn't be a decision which would be made without some additional cost, but I think it's worthwhile at least asking to see if it's possible to do that. My understanding, which could be wrong, is that the fountain won't actually be relocated at whatever site it's at for the best part of another 12 months. So there's a long time to go before that relocation. So I think that we have to be humble enough to accept that we didn't get it right. And to the extent that we can manage to do better in future, we should learn some lessons. And where we might be able to rectify something, if there is anything to be rectified, I think that we shouldn't be so pig-headed as to just say, that was decided, we had an election, the election justified the result, therefore we're not looking at it again. I think that would be an unfair thing to do. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I certainly welcome your commitment and the response you provided there. I think that will give some comfort to people of March and the wider area that at least we're going to look at it and see what we can do. So yeah, that's very welcome news indeed. The last point I just want to raise with yourself is sort of discussions we've been having. We've got agenda item 11 on the regarding the proportionality and appointment to things such as outside bodies. Can I suggest that we relook at the Constitution, the process that we take for appointing into outside bodies to try and simplify the process? I know we introduced the step of asking Cabinet to approve the appointment to outside bodies a number of years ago. I believe that was following a review at Obion scrutiny. I'm not sure it's actually delivering what was intended at the time, which was, I think, to try and get better engagement for people on outside bodies. I think we could have a simpler process where the leaders nominate once we've agreed what the proportionality is, and then it's a case of almost bookkeeping of making sure that we've got people on those outside bodies. And also, I've raised this quite a number of times in the past, is where we don't have representation. So, for example, we might have more places on an IDB, because that's a classic example. We've got district councillors for that area, that we look at possibly asking parish and town councillors if they can fill those spaces, because they will have particular local knowledge, and they will have better knowledge than, dare I say, a district council from the other end of the district around what happens in that local area. And I think it's probably time that we do look at that and we review it. Obviously, we're not going to change anything on agenda item 11 today, but if we can, I know there will be some further changes coming along for the July meeting. Also, I think it'll save a lot of officer time if we can simplify the process so that we can get on with more important projects and work on behalf of the district.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I'd like to thank Councillor Booth. That's the third question he's asked today, and he gave me advance notice of all three. So I'm really grateful for that. It really is helpful. Although on this particular subject, I wouldn't have needed advance notice. I could talk for hours on proportionality if necessary, and maybe I will when we come to agenda item 11. But you're entirely correct, through you, Chairman, Councillor Booth, that we have a process which was agreed back in 2012 for the appointment of people to outside bodies, and it is due time for that to be looked at again. And I think your suggestion that that be overview and scrutiny which looks at it is probably a good way of socialising this more widely across the council. So again, that's a suggestion that I will make sure that the chairman of the overview and scrutiny panel listens to, and I hope takes on board. And I think, Chairman, that Councillor Booth is correct, that we have a system in place at the moment which is unduly bureaucratic and could be simplified substantially with no harm done at all to the final solution that we've come up with. Whether we should re-permit representatives from this council not to be members of this council is again something which I think the Overview and Scrutiny Committee should look at, and we can possibly make that choice and decision again later in the year. We haven't got the opportunity in the time this year before the decisions have to be made to change the constitution, but anything which can be done to make the running of this council smoother and more efficient, I'm more than willing to listen to, and I think, Chairman, that the suggestion of Councillor Booth is well worth looking at. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item 10.
Chairman, on agenda item 9, is there not an additional facility for questions to be asked?
Agenda item 10, to receive reports from and ask questions of cabinet members with portfolio holder responsibilities in accordance with procedure rules 8.1 and 8.2. Procedure rule 8.2 permits questions to cabinet members about any matter which falls within their portfolio responsibilities. Any member wishing to ask a question should indicate this by raising their hand, and they will then be invited to speak in turn. Members are reminded that there is a total time allocation of 1 hour for this item. Councillor Patrick.
Yeah, some time ago we were looking at decriminalising parking. I'm not quite sure now which cabinet member is responsible for that. But what I would like to know is, are we going to go down the line of decriminalising parking within the district in order that we can solve some of the problems with parking in the district?
Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Councillor Patrick, we are going down the lines of civil parking enforcement. Unfortunately, with the Alliance at County Council, they're dragging their heels and they have pushed South Cambs forward. Instead of taking 3 councils together, they haven't done that. It should have been Fenland, Huntingdon and South Cambs. But because the way it's controlled at South Cambs, they have jumped first. So their civil parking enforcement will come into effect possibly sometime this year, early next year. We have a County Council Highway and Transport meeting in July. We should have a further update. We are still going down the line, and we're hoping when the order does go into the Ministry of Transport, it will come into being next year.
Are there any more questions for portfolio holders? Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question for Councillor D-Laws. Please, can you provide an update on the position of the draft local plan? What is the position regarding officers able to oversee the policy development of the local plan following the recent announcements at Peterborough City Council? Do we have personnel in place to support the plan going forward yet? Also, when will councillors be given the opportunity to consider the results of the first public consultation and feed into a revised draft local plan? And what's the new timescale for seeing the draft local plan through to conclusion? Thank you.
Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Mike the leader. Thank you, Councillor Booth, for giving me advance notice, because obviously there's several loaded questions in that, not just one straightforward one. So if I may take it in order that you actually sent it over to me, what is the position regarding officers able to oversee the policy and development of the local plan? Following recent announcements, Do we have personnel in place to support the draft local plan going forward? I can actually confirm we obviously have one FTE in post who continues to make preparation in the development of the local plan. That is at the moment, so there is one FTE. Prior to the election, the government published a consultation on planning reforms, including the local plan and potentially future systems of development. As portfolio holder, I thought it was important that I was informed and able to take stock of these proposals. However, with the timing of the local elections and the uncertainty this can create, I will now be reviewing this with officers. To continue with the local plan, we will need further staff to continue its development. And this again, something I will be reviewing with officers as a top priority. Now I have been confirmed back in post. So I'll move on to question 2. When will councillors be given the opportunity to consider the results of the first public consultation and feed into the revised draft local plan? The result of the first public consultation have now been published to the FDC website, and I will be happy for officers to circulate a link to this following the meeting. I think that will be helpful to all members. And lastly, your question, what is the new timescale for seeing the local plan through to conclusion? Once an extended officers team is established, it will take approximately 18 months for the local plan process to be concluded. I hope that helps.
Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Lords. I guess the point I'm not clear about is obviously you've said about sending the link round to members, but it's what we do after that and how members can feed into the policy development. So is that something that's under development as well at this moment in time? Yeah.
If I can return to Councillor Booth, absolutely. And obviously this is going to be part of the meeting process moving forward. And we will do it as a priority because there was obviously uncertainty with the local elections. So it's just been suspended for a short period of time. Thank you.
Are there any more questions for portfolio holders? Councillor Taylor. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. And again, I'd like to thank Councillor Taylor for giving advance notice of that question. Although Councillor Taylor isn't the only new councillor to have asked that question in the last week and a half to officers, the other councillor knows who he is. So thank you very much indeed for your being so assiduous as to ask the question at this time. We at this level of council don't have responsibility for social services. We don't have responsibility for education. So there aren't that many requirements generally where clearly we would need to have DBS clearances. We're no longer responsible directly for leisure, and we don't have a youth council anymore. So again, in many of the cases where in this council, it would have been arguable that DBS checks may have been required, that is no longer the case. Whether in the appointment to Young People March or any other organisation that we appoint to, there are requirements of that organisation to have DBS checks. It's that organisation's requirements which we have to fulfil rather than any of our own. I'm not aware of any, but there may be some. However, the question that Councillor Taylor has raised, Chairman, is quite an interesting one, because he's right. The gov.uk website is rather ambiguous on the subject. And I have to say that I think it would be unnecessary for us as individual councillors to have DBS checks to do our work as councillors. Now, it may be that it'll turn out that my opinion is wrong on that, but I think that one of the reasons that it's rather pointless is what happens if the DBS check produces something? What will happen? And in practice, unless it reveals that there's been a criminal conviction with a sentence imposed without option of a fine of more than 6 months, whether suspended or not, and thus the individual shouldn't have been qualified to be elected in the first place, there'd be absolutely nothing which could be done as a result of a DBS check which came back, which wasn't clean. So I don't see the point of having DBS checks in those circumstances. But having said that, Councillor Taylor, you are right that gov.uk website advice is conflicted on the matter. So officers have already started making inquiries of other councils and also of the Disclosure and Barring Service to see what advice can be obtained from those sources. And a statement will be circulated by officers to members of this council once that inquiry has been concluded and some decisions have been made. Thank you, Chairman.
Are there any other questions for portfolio holders? Agenda item 11, the report on the committee structures, political balance and allocation of seats can be found at pages 21 to 60 of the agenda pack. I would just like to remind members you are only able to speak once. Now call upon Councillor Bowden, Leader of the Council and portfolio holder with responsibilities for governance, to propose the report. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank the officers for the extraordinary amount of time and diligence that they have given in producing this report. And I'd also like to thank Councillor Booth, as the leader of the main opposition group, for his cooperation in getting to the situation that we've got to today with this report, which is in front of us. The recommendations are shown in the cover sheet under 3.1, and I won't read through them all. And I suggest, Chairman, that it makes sense for them to be taken en bloc unless any amendment is suggested. However, recommendation 3.3 talks about an alternative approach for politically proportionate allocation of seats. Now, there is a lot of legislation about political proportionality in making allocations of seats on committees and also to outside bodies. We have quite a bit within the Local Government and Housing Act 1989, and we also have regulations under the Political Proportionality Regulations of 1990. The trouble is that legislation is, at least in part, somewhat contradictory, leading to quite a number of different approaches which can be made by individuals depending upon their personal preferences. So quite a lot of discussion has taken place, and again I thank Councillor Booth for his cooperation in this, in order for the proposals that we have in front of us to have been made. And what is being suggested here in the allocations to committees and also to the outside bodies is that we adopt an alternative approach, which is to allow for all members in groups and our one member who is not in a group, all to be given their fair share of allocated seats. However, there is a strict legal position under the 1989 Act, which states that any individual who is not in a formal group doesn't get anything at all. Now, I don't think that's fair, but that's what that part of the legislation says, Section 15. Section 17 allows you to ignore that and to do something else. And that is what is being proposed today. And that is what we're calling here the alternative approach, which is to be fair to all of our members, whether they are in a group or not, to ensure that they all receive, all the two groups and the one other member, all receive their fair share of apportioned seats. So my proposal, Chairman, is first of all that it be agreed. I think it may need to be done separately, so it's for officers to give advice on this. But first of all, for us to agree that we would adopt the alternative approach rather than the strict legal approach under the 89 Act. And then I would move en bloc that all of the proposals in Section 3 of the cover sheet be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Do I have a seconder for the proposal? Councillor Mrs French. Thank you, Councillor Mrs French. You can reserve the right to speak at the end of the debate or at the time of seconding the motion. Do you wish to speak now? The item is open for debate. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, I move that we go to the substantive motion.
Councillor Mrs French, would you like to speak now? And Councillor Bowden, would you like to sum up?
No need, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll move to the vote with members again being reminded to keep your hands raised when relevant to assist member services with the counting. The first two recommendations require approval of the committees and panels set out at Appendix A for the 2023-2024 municipal year to include the proposed changes to the existing committee structures as set out at pages 21 and 22 of the report, together with the associated amendments to the Constitution set out at Appendix B. Are these recommendations agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you. You can put your hands down now. The next recommendation is to agree the political balance arrangements for committees and panels as set out at Appendix C, in respect of which the leader is proposing implementation of the proposals set out in the column entitled Alternative. All those in favour? Thank you. You may put your hands down. All those against? Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. You may now take your hands down and I'll call upon member services to announce the outcome, please. Thank you. As there has been no dissent, the alternative approach has been agreed. Following the alternative approach having been agreed, the next two recommendations are to agree the chair and vice chair for each of the committees, together with appointments to the various seats, as again set out in Appendix C. Are these agreed? Thank you. You may put your hands down. The next recommendation is to agree the political balance arrangements for outside bodies as set out at Appendix D, in respect of which the leader is again proposing implementation of an alternative approach as denoted by the red text. All those in favour? Thank you. You may now take your hands down. All those against? Thank you. You may now take your hand. Oh, any abstentions? Thank you. You may take your hands down, and I will call upon member services to announce the outcome, please.
Yeah, the result of the vote is we've had 32 voting in favour and 7 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you. As there has been no dissent, the alternative approach has been agreed. Final 2 recommendations are firstly for members to note that the distribution of seats amongst outside bodies and appointments to those seats will be discussed and proposed for agreement at the next meeting of Cabinet on the 12th of June 2023. And secondly, for members to note the intention to create 3 new committees for consideration at the July Council meeting, together with the associated changes in political proportionality and allocation of seats. Are these proposals duly noted? Item 12, combined authority membership and other appointments. Item 12 is in relation to Fenland District Council's appointments and nominations to the Combined Authority Board and committees, and can be found at pages 61 to 69 of the agenda pack. Members will also find a printed version of Appendix 3 to this report on their tables. I now call upon Councillor Bowden, Leader of the Council and Portfolio Holder with responsibilities for government, to propose the report. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to propose the report as is written. Some of you who are more politically and mathematically astute may question the accuracy of the tables which have been included within this section. And so in order to get I thought I'd better get my defence in first. I have to say that there have been some changes to the political situation in Peterborough City Council in the last couple of days. They will change the calculations which are shown in the papers here. I don't think the officers can be blamed for being a few days out of date. Those changes will not change the total number of seats allocated either on a 7-member committee or a 14-member committee of the combined authority. What they probably will do is to change the allocation of which local authority has representation from which political party on the 7-member Committee of Audit and Governance. But none of those changes will affect us. So the proposals which are in front of us at the moment as to which political party under the CPCA proportionality rules makes the recommendations will not change as a result of those mathematical shenanigans. So those are listed in Appendix 3, and I formally move the check.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the proposal? Thank you, Councillor Mrs. French. You can reserve the right to speak at the end of the debate or at the time of seconding the motion. Do you wish to speak now? The item is open for debate. Councillor Mrs. French, would you like to exercise your right to speak? Councillor Bowden, would you like to sum up?
No.
Thank you. We will now move to the vote, again keeping hands raised for as long as required to ensure your vote is counted. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Any abstentions? That has been agreed. Thank you. Item number 13 is the Whittlesea Neighbourhood Plan. Item 13 requests members to formally adopt the Whittlesea Neighbourhood Plan as a part of the development plan for Fenland. The report can be found at pages 71 to 133 of the agenda pack. I will now call upon Councillor Senate Clough to propose the report.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to present the Whittlesea Neighbourhood Plan to the Council. Good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to be here today to recommend to full Council that the Whittlesea Neighbourhood Plan be formally adopted as a part of Fenland's development plan. The Whittlesea Neighbourhood Plan has been prepared by Whittlesea Town Council with the support of the local community. In February, local people were invited to vote in a referendum on whether the Whittlesea Neighbourhood Plan should be used by Fenland District Council when determining planning applications. Almost 78% of voters supported the plan. Prior to the referendum, the neighbourhood plan was subject to an independent examination. Following that examination, the council was satisfied that the neighbourhood plan met all relevant legal requirements. As the neighbourhood plan meets the legal tests and has been supported by the majority of those who voted in the referendum, it must now be formally made, in other words, adopted by Fenland District Council. The council must uphold the referendum result. There is no known legal basis to reject the plan. Members may also be interested to know that the Neighbourhood Planning Act automatically gave the Whittlesea Neighbourhood Plan the same legal status as the adopted local plan from the point it successfully passed the referendum. Accordingly, since the referendum result, the council has treated the Whittlesea Neighbourhood Plan as part of Fenland's development plan when making decisions. The neighbourhood plan is the culmination of several years' hard work by the town council and local community, who have taken the opportunity to shape their local area through the neighbourhood planning process. On behalf of Fenland District Council, I would like to congratulate Whittlesea Town Council and all who supported its production on this important achievement.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the proposal? Councillor Booth.
I reserve my right, Chair.
Thank you. The item is now open for debate. Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would like to congratulate Whittlesea Town Council for all the hard work. I know there is a lot of hard work. March went through this same process. We started, I believe it was 2015, and it was completed in 2017. And it does make a difference when planning applications are submitted. So well done.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment? Councillor Booth, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
Yes, Chairman, I'll keep it brief. Yeah, I would also like to congratulate Whittlesea Town Council, but also the people of Whittlesea. They have spoken, they've decided. This is one of the bits of the Localism Act, which I think the government has got absolutely right. I'm not sure we actually really need to make the plan per se, because it is actually in effect now. But having gone through a neighbourhood plan myself, I know the pain that it can take to get to the final hurdle. And I think, yeah, we should commend the community of Whittlesea for putting forward a plan.
Thank you. Councillor Senate Clough, would you like to sum up? Thank you. We'll now move to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? The Whittlesea local plan is adopted. And that concludes this afternoon's meeting. I would like to thank you for your attendance, and may I remind you that the next meeting will take place on Monday, the 17th of July, 2023 at 4 p.m.
Congratulations, you're doing really well, especially all those different term things.